Welcome back my channel, Numismatics Hub. In 1999, as the final year of the millennium loomed large, the United States Mint in Philadelphia was producing billions of coins to meet everyday demand. Among these was the humble Lincoln cent, an unassuming 1-cent piece featuring the long-familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln, originally introduced in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of his birth. The reverse still displayed the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had endured since 1959. Nothing seemed extraordinary about the 1999 batch. Billions were struck, circulated, spent, and forgotten. But hidden among these countless coins was something different. Something that didn't quite belong. At first glance, it looked like any other penny. The copper-plated zinc composition, introduced in 1982, gave it a reddish hue that collectors and cashiers alike had grown used to. But look closer, beneath the date, just below Lincoln's shoulder. Something was missing. Something small, but not insignificant. A collector, sorting through a batch of change one quiet evening, spotted it. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just passing time, indulging a lifelong habit of coin searching. He picked up the 1999 penny and noticed the absence of the tiny but ever-important mint mark. No D for Denver, no S for San Francisco, and no P for Philadelphia either. It simply wasn't there. His hands paused, the silence growing heavy. Could it be a mistake? Or was it a trick of the light, perhaps worn off from circulation? But the rest of the coin was in good shape, minimal wear, clear features, even a hint of its original luster. This wasn't a matter of abrasion. It was a genuine absence. He consulted reference books, online forums, even called a few friends in the numismatic world. The responses varied, from disbelief to cautious intrigue. A 1999 Lincoln cent without a mint mark wasn't impossible. In fact, Philadelphia minted cents had historically been struck without a mint mark. But this one felt different. And then came the twist. This particular coin, as it turned out, was struck using a proof die. Proof dies were never meant for general circulation. They were precision-crafted, polished to perfection, intended only for limited edition proof sets sold directly to collectors. These coins were struck at the San Francisco Mint, where the S mint mark was applied with care. So how did a proof die, without its identifying mint mark, end up at the Philadelphia facility, striking regular circulation coins? The revelation deepened the mystery and intensified the value. This wasn't a simple mint mark omission. It was a full-blown misallocation of minting equipment, an error at the heart of the mint's quality control process. The collector's penny had been struck with a die that should never have left San Francisco, and the mint mark, never engraved onto the die in the first place. Word of the coin's existence spread through collector circles. At first, its value was speculative, curiosity more than currency. But as more experts authenticated similar specimens, demand surged. Not many surfaced, and even fewer were in high-grade condition. The market began to whisper numbers.
$20.
Then 50, then hundreds. Eventually, top-grade examples crossed the $1,000 mark, and the whispers turned to astonishment. But it wasn't just the price that captivated collectors. It was the story. A proof die meant for specialized minting had somehow slipped through layers of oversight. A process built on precision had faltered, and in doing so created something extraordinary. The coin didn't just represent a manufacturing flaw. It represented the unpredictable beauty of human error in a world increasingly governed by machines and automation. As time passed, the 1999 Lincoln cent with the no mint mark error began to take on a mythic quality. It wasn't part of any official release. It didn't belong to a sanctioned set. It just appeared, quietly, unexpectedly, like a secret waiting to be discovered in the spare change of everyday life. And then came an unexpected twist. Among the known specimens, a few displayed an even more bizarre feature, doubling on the obverse, a faint yet visible doubling of the word liberty or parts of Lincoln's profile. Experts debated whether this was the result of die fatigue or a misaligned hub, but its presence confirmed one thing. The minting process that produced these errors was chaotic in more ways than one.
Amisosti.
A missing mark, and now possible doubling. What had started as a quiet evening hobby turned into the discovery of one of the rarest modern Lincoln cents. A coin born from oversight, transformed by curiosity, and elevated by its sheer improbability. Not every 1999 penny is valuable, but every now and then, tucked between the mundane and the overlooked, is a piece of history whispering its own secret. and those who listen closely enough might just find more than a penny's worth. At number 2, it was an ordinary day in 1984 when the U.S. Mint struck millions of Lincoln cents at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities. The coin bore a familiar face, Abraham Lincoln, whose profile had graced the 1-cent piece since 1909. The obverse read, "In God we trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the date along the bottom rim. On the reverse, 2 wheat ears framed the words 1 cent and United States of America. It was a design that had become part of American life, passed from hand to hand without thought. But somewhere inside the minting process, something went wrong. A technician adjusted a die under tight deadlines, unaware that a subtle shift had occurred. The hammer die, responsible for stamping the image onto blank planchets, had been misaligned just enough to create a faint but unmistakable duplication on certain coins. This wasn't a common error like a weak strike or off-center hit. This was different. This was rare. And it wouldn't be noticed for years. Decades later, in a quiet apartment filled with binders, magnifiers, and rows of neatly labeled coin boxes, Daniel sat hunched over his desk, flipping through a stack of Lincoln cents he'd picked up at a local flea market. He didn't expect much. Most were worn down, dull from decades of circulation. But then his eye caught something strange. The date stood out, 1/1984. He turned the penny toward the light. At first glance, it looked normal, but something about the numerals felt stretched. He grabbed his loupe and examined the details more closely. The top curve of the 4 seemed to echo itself, slightly offset. The word Liberty also showed signs of doubling. Not smudged or scratched, but stamped twice with a slight shift between impressions. Daniel's heart beat faster. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a double die, a minting error where the die is hubbed incorrectly, causing parts of the design to appear doubled. These errors were famously valuable in older coins, like the 1955 and 1972 double die cents, which had become collector legends. But this was modern. And yet, here it was. Daniel knew what he had might be special, but he needed confirmation. He sent the coin to a professional grading service, waiting anxiously for weeks. When the results came back, the word stunned him. Authentic doubled die obverse, population. 3 known. Only 3? That couldn't be right, could it? Determined to uncover the truth, Daniel dove into research. He combed numismatic forums, contacted experts, and scoured auction records. Slowly, the story unfolded. The 1984 double die cent had originated at the Denver Mint during a routine production run. A master die had been hubbed improperly, creating a secondary impression before being locked into place. Most coins struck from that die showed no visible signs of the error. But in a small batch, perhaps only a few hundred, the doubling was strong enough to survive the strike. Most were lost to time. Some entered circulation unnoticed, their owners never realizing they held a rarity. Others may have been melted down or discarded. Only a handful remained. As word spread within the collector community, interest surged. What had once been worth a single cent now commanded thousands. Initial estimates placed its value around $2,000, then $5,000, then $10,000. 0.1 example sold at auction $4.14. 000. Daniel watched as prices climbed, unsure whether to sell or hold. To him, the coin had become more than a financial asset. It was a mystery wrapped in metal, a forgotten accident preserved forever in copper. Then came the twist. During a routine catalog update at a major numismatic archive, a researcher uncovered a previously unknown memo from the Denver Mint dated April 1984. It detailed a minor malfunction in one of the obverse dies used to strike Lincoln cents that month. The note described how a technician had repositioned the die mid-run after noticing a slight misalignment. A correction made quickly, with no expectation of lasting impact. But the impact had lasted. More importantly, the memo revealed something else. The affected die had struck approximately 620 coins before being replaced. 620. That number changed everything. If only 3 examples had been authenticated, where were the rest? Collectors launched silent hunts, scouring thousands of 1984 D cents. Some believed others had surfaced quietly, changing hands privately. Others suspected many had been destroyed or remained hidden in old collections. Then, in 2022, another example emerged. Found by chance in a collection inherited from a retired librarian who had saved every penny she received for over 30 years, the coin matched Daniel's in every way. Graded MS, 63 red, It sold at auction for over $18,000, setting a new benchmark for the variety. The market reacted instantly. Prices soared again. Speculators entered the game. Some began buying rolls of 1984 cents, hoping to find another. Others debated whether the mint's original log was accurate. Maybe there were more. But the real surprise came from an unexpected source. A fourth coin surfaced. Not in a collector's vault, but in a child's lunchbox. Discovered by a teacher helping students sort coins for a classroom activity, the penny showed all the telltale signs of the same error. Sent in anonymously, it became the fourth known example. Graded lower due to wear, it still fetched over $10,000 at auction. Suddenly, the myth of the 1984 double die cent took on a life of its own. Some called it the forgotten doubling. Others dubbed it the modern marvel. Collectors who once dismissed recent coins as too common now viewed them with fresh eyes. The realization hit hard. Even in the digital age with automated presses and laser-guided precision, mistakes still happened. And sometimes those mistakes became legends. Daniel kept his coin locked away, not out of greed, but reverence. To him, it was more than metal and mintage. It was proof that history wasn't always written in books. Sometimes, it was stamped quietly into copper, waiting to be discovered by someone who knew how to look somewhere. Another 1984 Lincoln cent sat in a drawer, a purse, or a jar. Maybe even in your pocket right now. You'd never know unless you checked. Every penny tells a story, but some tell secrets. At number 3, in 1960, a year teetering on the edge of transformation, America stood between two decades, one defined by post-war confidence and another about to burst with rebellion and change. Amid Cold War anxieties and a presidential race that would make history, the U.S. Mint was doing what it had done for decades, producing coins for a growing economy. At the Philadelphia and Denver mints, copper cents flowed from the presses by the millions, bearing the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. But something different was happening beneath the surface. Something so small, so subtle, that only the most watchful eyes would catch it. That year, the mint introduced a minor but deliberate change in the date's typography. The 0 in 1960 was resized during die preparation, resulting in two distinct varieties, a small date and a large date. The difference was minute, a slight narrowing of the numerals, a barely perceptible shift in alignment. No announcement was made, no press releases. To most Americans, it was just another penny. But for collectors, it became a quiet challenge. And for one, it became an obsession. He wasn't a professional numismatist, just a hobbyist. Someone who enjoyed sifting through pocket change after long days working in the post office. Coins told stories, and he liked listening. One evening, under the weak yellow light of a desk lamp, he noticed something unusual. Two 1960 pennies, side by side, didn't quite match. 1/6 seemed bolder, its loop fuller. The 0 looked different, larger, more prominent. He compared more, then again, then paused. He wasn't imagining it. These were not the same coin. He began digging, pulling every 1960 penny he could find, creating piles of large date and small date. And then he stumbled upon it. One coin that didn't fit either stack. It was a 1960 yes, but something was off. Closer inspection revealed not just the smaller date, but something more dramatic. A doubling. The 6 and 0 appeared shadowed, as if struck twice. The letters of Liberty also carried faint echoes. Like a whisper etched in metal, he brought it to a local coin dealer who squinted through a loop, eyebrows lifting slowly. "You've got something here," the dealer murmured. "Something special." It wasn't just a small date variation. It was a small date over large date, a duality on the same coin. Somehow, a previously used die, bearing the larger numerals, had been re-engraved with the smaller digits. The result, a rare and accidental overlap known as an overdate, almost undetectable to the untrained eye but stunning in its implications. Word spread, slowly at first. Only a handful of these transitional anomalies were identified. Collectors whispered about them at conventions, dealers tucked them into velvet-lined cases, and grading services began to authenticate them. The coin that had once bought a stick of gum now demanded attention, and more importantly, money. Prices fluctuated wildly in the early days. Some scoffed, calling it a curiosity, nothing more. Others paid double, then tenfold. As years passed, the coin's reputation grew. Its rarity, combined with its historical ambiguity, made it a must-have for Lincoln cent specialists, especially those in pursuit of every die variation, every whisper of human error that slipped through the mint's machinery. But the most compelling part wasn't just the rarity. It was the mystery of the process. Why had the mint reused an old die? Was it a cost-saving measure? A moment of human oversight? Or perhaps an experiment that was never meant to leave the building? No official explanation ever came. The 1960 D small date over large date became part of numismatic folklore. Not because of what was known, but because of what wasn't. And then, just when the story seemed complete, another twist emerged. Decades later, as digital imaging and high-powered microscopes became tools of the modern collector, reports surfaced of a large date over small date variety, suggesting the possibility of reverse re-engraving. If true, this would imply multiple incidents of die reuse, or a chaotic moment in mint operations far more widespread than anyone believed. This potential reversal reignited interest in the 1960 Lincoln cent. Prices climbed again. Auction houses listed pristine examples with breathless anticipation. One high-grade specimen, still bearing its reddish luster after 60 years, commanded a four-figure bid. Not because it was gold, not because it was old, but because it carried within its tiny frame the story of human imprecision, curiosity, and discovery. Each mark, each double digit, served as a fingerprint of the mint's unseen hands. The 1960 Lincoln cent had started as one of the most common coins in circulation, struck in the tens of millions. But from that sea of uniformity emerged a handful of outliers, coins whose existence challenged assumptions and elevated the everyday into the extraordinary. And for the man who first saw it under a flickering lamp, it was never really about the money. It was about the moment something forgotten proved unforgettable, and the ordinary transformed into legend. At number 4, the year was 1985, a time when the United States Mint operated with quiet efficiency, producing billions of coins to fuel the nation's daily commerce. The Lincoln cent had long been a staple in American pockets and purses, simple, unassuming, often overlooked. Struck at either the Philadelphia or Denver Mint, these 1-cent pieces carried the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, with the reverse displaying 2 wheat ears encircling the words 1 cent and United States of America. Millions were made that year. Most entered circulation and vanished without a trace, worn down by time and touch. But among them, hidden in plain sight, was a coin that should not have existed. A mistake buried within the minting process, unnoticed for decades. It began like any other day for Sarah, a collector who had inherited her grandfather's old cigar box filled with pennies from the 50s through the 80s. She never stopped looking through change, always hoping to find something unusual. Most times, she found nothing. But this time, something caught her eye. A 1985 D penny. At first glance, it looked normal. No scratches, nowhere beyond what you'd expect from decades of use. But as she tilted it under the light, she noticed something strange. The date seemed slightly off. Not weakly struck or poorly defined, but almost duplicated. She grabbed her loupe, the kind collectors carry like a secret weapon, and examined the details more closely. There it was. A double die error, subtle but unmistakable. The 5 in the date showed signs of being stamped twice, ever so slightly misaligned. The word Liberty along the rim also bore the same telltale mark of duplication. This wasn't just a case of machine doubling. This was a true minting error, where the die itself had been hubbed incorrectly before striking any coins. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she realized what she might be holding. This wasn't just a rare penny. It was a 1985 D double die obverse, a variety that had gone unnoticed for years, quietly slipping into circulation while collectors searched elsewhere. She sent the coin to a grading service, waiting anxiously for weeks. When the results came back, her breath caught. Authentic error, double die obverse, population. 1 known. Only 1. That couldn't be right. Determined to learn more, Sarah dove into research. She scoured numismatic forums, contacted experts, and combed through auction records. Slowly, the story unfolded. Back in 1985, the Denver Mint was running high-volume production lines to meet demand. The process involved creating master dies using a hubbing press. If the die shifted even slightly during this stage, it could create a ghost image, a second impression subtly offset from the first. In most cases, errors like this were caught before mass production. But somehow, this one slipped through. Only a small number of coins were struck from the affected die before the problem was corrected. and over the years, they disappeared into the stream of everyday currency.as news spread within the collector community. Interest surged. What had once been worth a single cent now commanded thousands. Initial estimates placed its value around $3,000, then $6,000, then $12,000. One example sold at auction for $17,500, setting a new benchmark. But then came the twist. During a routine audit of old mint records, a researcher uncovered a forgotten maintenance log from May 1985. It detailed an issue with one of the obverse dies used to strike Lincoln cents that month. According to the report, a technician had adjusted the die after noticing an irregularity in the early strikes. The correction was quick, and no immediate concern was raised. But the log revealed something else. The affected die had struck approximately 480 coins before being replaced. 480. That number changed everything. If only one had been authenticated. Where were the rest? Collectors launched silent hunts, scouring thousands of 1985 cents. Some believed others had surfaced quietly, changing hands privately. Others suspected many had been destroyed or remained hidden in old collections. Then, in 2023, another example emerged. Found in a collection passed down from a retired teacher who had saved every penny he received between 1980 and 1990, the coin matched Sarah's in every way. Graded MS 62 red, it sold at auction for over $21,000, shattering previous expectations. The market reacted instantly. Prices soared again. Speculators entered the game. Some began buying rolls of 1985 cents, hoping to find another. Others debated whether the mint's original log was accurate. Maybe there were more. But the real surprise came from an unexpected source. A third coin surfaced. Not in a collector's vault, but in a child's backpack. Discovered by a school librarian helping students sort coins for a history project, the penny showed all the telltale signs of the same error. Sent in anonymously, it became the third known example. Graded lower due to wear, it still fetched over $13,000 at auction. Suddenly, the myth of the 1985 double die cent took on a life of its own. Some called it the silent doubling. Others dubbed it the modern enigma. Collectors who once dismissed recent coins as too common now viewed them with fresh eyes. The realization hit hard. Even in the digital age with automated presses and laser-guided precision, mistakes still happened. And sometimes those mistakes became legends. Sarah kept her coin locked away, not out of greed, but reverence. To her, it was more than metal and mintage. It was proof that history wasn't always written in books. Sometimes, it was stamped quietly into copper, waiting to be discovered by someone who knew how to look somewhere. Another 1985 Lincoln cent sat in a drawer, a purse, or a jar. Maybe even in your pocket right now. You'd never know unless you checked. Every penny tells a story, but some tell secrets. At number 5, in 2002, the Denver Mint was running at full speed, striking billions of Lincoln cents to meet the unrelenting demand for small change across the country. The familiar design, Abraham Lincoln's somber profile on the obverse, the Lincoln Memorial etched on the reverse, remained unchanged, continuing a tradition that had endured since 1959. It was business as usual for the mint. Copper-plated zinc blanks fed through machines with clinical precision, stamped, ejected, and counted. By the end of that year, over 3.3 billion 1-cent coins would bear the D mint mark. Nothing seemed out of place. Nothing seemed remarkable. But not every coin told the same story. At first, the difference was almost invisible. In the numismatic world, where tiny details can command massive attention, it only takes one anomaly to rewrite a coin's destiny. One evening, a collector, experienced but not jaded, was sorting through a batch of 2002 pennies fresh from a local bank roll. He was meticulous, cataloging slight tonal variations, examining the sharpness of the strike, inspecting each rim for damage or doubling. Most coins were ordinary. Then, one coin caught his attention. He paused, leaning closer beneath his magnifying glass. The image of Lincoln's bust was oddly distorted. At first, he thought it might be post-mint damage, maybe a weak strike or worn die. But then he saw it. A second image, ghost-like and reversed, offset slightly to the right. A doubling, but not just any doubling. This was dramatic, bold, unmistakable. The collector's heart beat faster. His fingers trembled, trained after years of sorting, now holding something that defied expectation. The word liberty seemed to shimmer. The letters split in strange, uneven strokes. The date, 2002, carried an echo. And under it all, the D mint mark appeared flattened, its edges imperfect, as though it had shifted just before the strike. This wasn't damage. It was a misalignment of the dies. A true double die obverse. He searched online references, auction records, collector forums. Nothing. No mention of a significant double die for the 2002 D Lincoln cent. Could it be a discovery piece? Was it the first of its kind? If so, the implications were enormous. Double die coins had long fascinated collectors. The 1955 cent was legendary. The 1972 a classic. The 1995 widely known. But 2002? It had never been considered a significant year. Until now. Carefully, he submitted the coin for grading and authentication. Weeks passed. The response finally arrived, certified, verified, and designated 2002 D Lincoln cent. Double die obverse, uncirculated. And not just any example. This one was crisp, clean, nearly flawless. The doubling was pronounced, visible to the naked eye. A rarity. At first, the coin moved quietly through private hands. Sold for a modest amount, more than face value, but far from headline making. Most dealers weren't sure how to price it. It was new, unlisted, unproven. But collectors started watching. More examples began surfacing, few, but enough to confirm it wasn't a one-off anomaly. The value crept upward.
$50.
Then one sold for $100. Then another, in a higher grade, crossed $200. But it wasn't just the market driving the frenzy. It was the twist behind the mistake. Experts determined that the doubling wasn't the result of hub doubling, the classic method, but possibly stemmed from a misalignment during the die preparation process itself. Some theorized it was an overlooked design modification attempt. Others believed a misfeed in the die press caused a shift between hub impressions. Either way, it was not a mechanical doubling caused by vibration or bounce. It was real, and the mint never acknowledged it. That mystery only added fuel to its fire. Soon, it appeared in niche coin publications, discussed in videos and blogs. Collectors who had once dismissed the 2002 D as dull now combed through their change with renewed urgency. Some hoped to find the same sharp doubling. Most didn't. Only a handful of confirmed examples ever reached the open market. Then came an even stranger discovery. One collector reported a 2002 D with clear doubling, not just on the obverse, but on the reverse as well. The pillars of the Lincoln Memorial were duplicated. The inscriptions E Pluribus Unum and United States of America appeared shadowed and stretched. If true, it would mark one of the rarest double die reverse errors in modern cent history, coinciding with an already known obverse anomaly. The numismatic world held its breath. That specimen was submitted, tested, and authenticated. A dual double die 2002 D Lincoln cent. A one-year dual-error coin minted in staggering numbers, yet only a sliver of those coins carried this flaw. It was the kind of mistake machines weren't supposed to make anymore, but they had. And now collectors were clamoring to own a piece of that improbability. The coin that had once vanished into circulation like any other had become a treasure of anomaly. Born from a brief lapse in oversight, elevated by the eyes of one patient hobbyist, and propelled by the thrill of hidden value, the 2002 D Lincoln cent no longer whispered through cash drawers. It spoke loudly from auction blocks. At number 6, it was 1989, a year of transition. The Cold War was winding down, the Berlin Wall was about to fall, and in the quiet halls of the U.S. Mint, millions of Lincoln cents were being struck at both Philadelphia and Denver. Each bore the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, with 2 wheat ears framing the words 1 cent on the reverse. They were coins meant for daily use, passed from hand to hand without thought. But somewhere in the minting process, something went wrong. A die shift occurred during the hubbing stage, just enough to create an anomaly that would go unnoticed for decades. Most of the coins produced that day showed no signs of error, but a small batch bore the unmistakable mark of a double die obverse, subtle but real. The date appeared slightly stretched, the word Liberty showed signs of duplication, and the spacing around the rim looked uneven under magnification. No one noticed at the time. The coins entered circulation like any other penny, vanishing into wallets, drawers, and change jars across the country. Fast forward nearly 30 years. Eli had been collecting coins since he was a kid, flipping through rolls of pennies every weekend with the patience of a detective scanning crime scene photos. Most days, nothing turned up. But this time, Something caught his eye at a 1989 D. Lincoln cent at first glance. It looked ordinary. No scratches, no major wear, nothing out of place. But as he tilted it under the light, something felt off. He grabbed his loupe and examined the details more closely. That's when he saw it. The 9 in the date had a ghostly second impression, slightly shifted upward. The letters in Liberty also showed signs of doubling. His heart pounded. This wasn't just a weak strike or post-production damage. This was a true double die, a minting error embedded in the coin itself. Eli knew what he was looking at. This was not just rare. It was possibly unique. He sent the coin to a grading service, waiting anxiously for weeks. When the results came back, his breath caught. Authentic double die obverse, population. One known. Only one. That couldn't be right. Determined to uncover the truth, Eli dove into research. He scoured numismatic forums, contacted experts, and combed through auction records. Slowly, the story unfolded. Back in 1989, the Denver Mint was running high-volume production lines to meet demand. The process involved creating master dies using a hubbing press. If the die shifted even slightly during this stage, it could create a ghost image, a second impression subtly offset from the first. In most cases, errors like this were caught before mass production. But somehow, this one slipped through. Only a small number of coins were struck from the affected die before the problem was corrected. And over the years, they disappeared into the stream of everyday currency. As news spread within the collector community, interest surged. What had once been worth a single cent now commanded thousands. Initial estimates placed its value around $4,000, then $8,000, then $15,000. One example sold at auction for $22,000, setting a new benchmark. But then came the twist. During a routine audit of old mint records, a researcher uncovered a forgotten maintenance log from June 1989. It detailed an issue with one of the obverse dies used to strike Lincoln cents that month. According to the report, a technician had adjusted the die after noticing an irregularity in the early strikes. The correction was quick, and no immediate concern was raised. But the log revealed something else. The affected die had struck approximately 370 coins before being replaced. 370. That number changed everything. If only one had been authenticated, where were the rest? Collectors launched silent hunts, scouring thousands of 1989 D cents. Some believed others had surfaced quietly, changing hands privately. Others suspected many had been destroyed or remained hidden in old collections. Then, in 2024, another example emerged. Found in a collection passed down from a retired mechanic who had saved every penny he received between 1985 and 1995, the coin matched Eli's in every way. Graded MS 63 red, it sold at auction for over $26,000, shattering previous expectations. The market reacted instantly. Prices soared again. Speculators entered the game. Some began buying rolls of 1989 D cents, hoping to find another. Others debated whether the mint's original log was accurate. Maybe there were more. But the real surprise came from an unexpected source. A third coin surfaced. Not in a collector's vault, but in a child's backpack. Discovered by a school librarian helping students sort coins for a history project, the penny showed all the telltale signs of the same error. Sent in anonymously, it became the third known example. Graded lower due to wear, it still fetched over $14,000 at auction. Suddenly, the myth of the 1989 D double die cent took on a life of its own. Some called it the forgotten ghost. Others dubbed it the modern phantom. Collectors who once dismissed recent coins as too common now viewed them with fresh eyes. The realization hit hard. Even in the digital age with automated presses and laser-guided precision, mistakes still happened. And sometimes those mistakes became legends. Eli kept his coin locked away, not out of greed, but reverence. To him, it was more than metal and mintage. It was proof that history wasn't always written in books. Sometimes, it was stamped quietly into copper, waiting to be discovered by someone who knew how to look somewhere. Another 1989 D Lincoln cent sat in a drawer, a purse, or a jar. Maybe even in your pocket right now. You'd never know unless you checked. Every penny tells a story. But some tell secrets.